And we're back with more of the Shacknews Awards 2023. We're going to talk strategy here. Best strategy game. And this is kind of a nebulous category these days because there's games that probably identify as an RPG or something else or an isometric shooter, like random games that also require strategy. So let me get through these nominees and then we'll start shouting at each other over what game's the best. Our first nominee, Dune Spice Wars. Next up, Shadow Gambit The Cursed Crew. Jagged Alliance 3. Baldur's Gate 3. Cities Skylines 2. And a game that I think a lot of people forgot came out this year, Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp. So those are the nominees. I'll talk about Advance Wars real quick, and then we can get to some of these other ones. Advance Wars is definitely a strategy game. It's a military kind of tile-based game that was huge for Game Boy Advance. And then that franchise kind of went poof for a while. It came back. They were going to launch it last year. They delayed it by a year because they didn't want to launch it the same week or month as the Ukraine-Russian war began. They spent the next year trying to make it more cartoony, I think, because there's these like leaders that are all look like anime characters or Pokemon gym leaders. But yeah, it's this is probably one of the harder games in this category, in my opinion. Advance Wars has always been a difficult game, and for people who want that challenge, or maybe if you liked Into the Breach or some of those other kind of top-down strategy games, this is gonna scratch that itch for you big time. And in a year where Nintendo just released a lot of bangers, I think this one kind of came and went pretty quickly. Didn't really piss anyone off along the way either, which I think was more of the focus for Nintendo than anything else. But yeah, it's a very good bundle of both the games. It's a redesign of all the levels and all the art, and a lot of the voice acting has been updated. Yeah, it's a cool little game.
I do have a question about it though, because I remember one of the
Mhm.
selling points for the Advance Wars series is that you only needed one Game Boy Advance to play, and you could pass it around with your friends and play up to 3 or 4 people. Can you do that in the reboot? Can you pass your Switch around and still play locally with like one person with 2 people with one Switch or 3 people with one Switch?
I don't know.
Oh no.
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Yeah.
It does have I'm almost certain it has online multiplayer, but I
It
also
does.
think it has, like, local link multiplayer
Local
where,
link. Okay,
like
probably. Yeah.
But the question Greg's asking about the one cartridge thing, I'm not sure if that works on Switch. Um, but you're right, that was a selling point of the Game Boy game, and Nintendo kind of did that with a lot of games in that era, and even on DS and 3DS a little bit. I think there was some, and it was mainly just the multiplayer experience though, Greg. So like, I don't think there's like a co-op that can be done with like bespoke Wi-Fi. But yeah, I'd be honest with you, I didn't make it very far. That game's hard as shit. Like it is punishing, and in my mind, I never played it with multiplayer in mind. It was a single player game for me. It was great for road trips or flights or whatever. It still is if you want a time sync game, and also really challenging. So when you do, I like the battle puzzle mechanic in that game and finding the right way or the right placement of your army and stuff. It's pretty rewarding. But yeah, I'm not sure, Greg. It's a good question. Who wants to talk about City Skylines 2?
Me.
Okay, Bill,
Me.
hit me.
Yeah, City Skylines 2 is actually very high up on one of my favorite games of the year, and it was actually my first time playing a Cities game. I didn't actually play the first Cities game, so I was going in brand new. So all those features, also that we've spoken about throughout these different deliberations, and how
hmm
those used to be mods, those are just base expectations for me because they've always been in the game that I've played.
Yeah.
But this was a game that I found myself thinking about all the time, and the first time you make a city, It's awful. I don't mean the game. I mean like your creation is just ass because you don't know what you don't know. So all the problems that are coming down the line with the types of roads you build and the way where you place things, I don't know where your water stations come from versus where your waste management stations are placed. Like apparently that's a big deal that I've learned about.
Yes.
Um, even where you put like your garbage disposal, like there's a lot of things that come into this. And what I realized is that I very quickly stopped my first city and was like, okay, I understand now. I'm going to start again because now I know what I'm doing. But that's true until you pass the point you were at the first time. And
Yep.
then it's this whole other mess. And I was spending lots of time, throughout my days when I wasn't playing, when I was working, thinking about this and then planning like, well, what if I start like this and put my roads like that? And it gets so deep down into it makes me think that actual city design is a miracle that they work.
Yeah.
Because you get to a point where you're like, okay, this is my downtown area, and the roads are not sufficient at all. The way that you're moving traffic in and out of the downtown area is not sufficient at all. This doesn't work whatsoever, and I can't fix that because I have skyscrapers on both sides of the street, and I can't widen the roads. I can't, and you just get down this rabbit hole where everything is like trying to come to a compromise, and you're always trying to think 10 steps ahead of like what's going to be the problem. My people really want commercial, but I really want to build them skyscraper commercial buildings to save on space. So I'm just going to deny them commercial real estate for now and let them all be unemployed for a while or whatever. And it's I was really highly engaged with that, and I do feel that it is a strategy game. I know that some people are like, but it's definitely a strategy game, and it had me thinking when I was playing, when I wasn't playing, planning, watching videos of people that had ideas and solutions for the problems that I was running into, and it's something that I'm going to go back to because actually planning and executing a city is very rewarding when something works, and I just can't. It makes you chase that. And it does a really good job of giving you wins, but also not giving you everything. So you always have something to strive for, but you're always, improving and feeling better about what you do. So loved it.
Yeah. No, I think what you're talking about, like that you can go into. TJ has a perfect example of this. TJ's like, I'm gonna make a city that's a happy face, right? And then like, it came to him in a dream or something. And the next day he does it, And I love the sandbox element of cities games, of city builders in general, and the tools that they added in Cities 2. There was no internet management in Cities 1, but now you have to think about internet logistics, right? When you're laying down your roads, you need to start thinking at that moment about public transportation, about the flow of traffic, and maybe not putting a 2-lane street there, maybe putting a 4-lane one-way,
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that people learned in the first cities, I think you see the lesson of the players in Cities 2 as well, right? Like they made the artificial intelligence for the vehicle, like individual vehicles, far better, where they like understand lanes and have to get across, because gridlock is always a problem in city builders. I feel like
Yeah.
the stuff they did to make driving in that game more intelligent, I thought was cool. The fact that you can make like underground tunnels now with roads adds a whole nother level of strategy to this game. And
I
yeah,
was
strategically
charging.
placing water pumps away from the poop water, very
Hey,
important strategy there.
it happens. I was actually I was charging $50 to park on any of my streets.
You're a monster.
$50, but I provided ample public
Man.
transportation and parking garages on the cheap.
You're still a monster.
There you go.
That's how I was trying to get people to stop parking on the street and stop it's absolutely amazing. And it's what's funny is that my revenue obviously skyrocketed because people have to park.
Mhm.
So suddenly I was in the green, man. It was
Listen
great.
to this, man. The people wanted commercial real estate so they can get jobs, and this tyrant issues a mandate for eliminating free parking. He does.
Absolutely.
These people don't
Profitability,
even
baby.
have
There's-
You know what?
That's-
Take the
that's how you
bus.
get in the
Take the
black.
bus.
how to where they don't have a job, Bill.
Hey,
There's,
we had an industrial section that was booming, man.
Bus
I
drivers.
bet you don't
bus
even have
drivers
a high
job?
school in your town.
No,
Yeah,
I do
you
have a
do.
high school, and it has a
Legal bus
giant
drivers.
football stadium that I've never seen anyone play football on, so I'm a little bitter about that.
there's
The
a
football stadium's bigger than the entire college campus, yet yeah, it's amazing.
There's a popular Powerpuff Girls episode about your type of city, Bill, where the mayor is like, nobody actually lives in Citiesville. They commute.
I'm with Bill on this, by the way. It just looks like my flat.
You're a monster
there.
too.
I'm also team parking fees.
Team
Oh, it's
parking fees,
absurd.
go.
It's
I
absurd.
had no idea this was a Tropico game.
Yeah.
Look, they're parking on the sidewalks, blocking up traffic, cluttering my city. They can pay to park or catch the damn bus. Catch the bus.
The amount of strategy that goes into building a bus route. Yeah, you
Bus
can
route.
take the bus or you can pay $50 to park. Nobody feels bad.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I've been enjoying myself on City Skylines too, and as mayor of my city, there's no $50 parking fees.
My man.
How's
know.
your, how's
He's
your
the hero
income
we
working there,
deserve
Danny?
right there.
Are you
Hey,
making money?
We've got plenty of income strategies there.
I made Austin take a
Yeah.
bus once. He hated it.
No. This is not about the bus, Greg. This is about CES. Greg told me to get on a bus during CES in Las Vegas. And I was like,
Oh,
Greg, this thing is not moving for
And
3
Disney
hours.
and downtown Disney in Florida for Extra Life.
Well, that was, we were trapped. We had to do that. But like, never get on a bus in Las Vegas during a convention. I'm sorry. It moved what, 20 feet? And then we got off? You remember, Greg?
That's
Yeah, it was
hilarious.
there, but it was there. That was the more important thing. It was there.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, yeah, you can take the bus in City Skylines, or you could just design better cities, guys. I'm just saying. Maybe your city design isn't great. If
Public
people have-
transportation is at the heart of any good city design, in my opinion. So
Well, that's
We're
the
trying,
problem,
we're trying to
though.
be good on the environment.
Spoken like
here,
someone
Austin.
who's never lived in LA.
No, but that's
terrible in LA.
LA, yeah. The railway.
it's one of
there,
the
whatever.
city's problems. They need better public transportation.
Donovan could redesign LA and revolutionize
I
it.
could.
The
but I
problem
just
I
didn't
have,
do it.
and this is something that, this is how old I am, SimCity for SNES had, that Cities doesn't really do excellent, is that at the start of the game, you can't lay down a railway system. Like, you haven't unlocked that yet. So you have to build a city around roads. And then you unlock the ability to add, like, mass transit. I'm not talking about buses. Like, to me, a functional railway system is huge for these cities to actually get rid of traffic. And it's one of those things that you always have to go back and kind of retrofit your city. Or in my case, there's always, like, the old part of my city that is denser population, and then the newer part with the skyscrapers and the public transportation.
I built my I had no problem with that because I just built a subway system that it obviously ran underground, and the above ground subway stations were really easy, but so I didn't have a problem with that. But one thing that I appreciate, and I don't know if this was a thing in the first cities, obviously, because as I said, I didn't play the first cities, but I like that there's an option if you're just like, you know what, I don't really want to grind, like I want to take a break. You can turn off the unlock system and you can turn off the budget system. So if you wanted to just like go into like a free mode and just build whatever you wanted to build and just sort of get it out of your system and like not worry about winning the game so much as like just making something as cool and modern as you want, you can do that.
But I like the challenge of existing within a budget and like
So do I.
figuring out ways to reach cash flow break even. Some of us will just pay cops less. Other monsters charge $50 for parking. You can
$50
also-
is only because they wouldn't let me put it higher.
But I slashed the budget for police like 60%. I'm like, you
I
guys
cut the
are
police
getting...
budget, and they complained about crime. Look, my hands were tied. Okay,
So
sadly
you tried. You tried
we
what
had
I
to open
did
up a
first.
second police department. I didn't bring
Donovan,
any joy
that
to do
tells
it.
me
But
your education wasn't great because they're always telling you to combat it with
I want to go to
education or
school.
something.
Donovan's like, look, all right, we'll just add Batman and it'll be fine.
Dude, if you could have a vigilante in your city, oh my god, that'd be so cool.
That would be
That
an
would actually be
awesome
really
mod.
cool. Yeah.
That would be hilarious if you could
That's
like
a mod
follow
I
them
need.
around. That would be
Mhm.
awesome. Somebody out there, please make that mod for Cities 2.
It'd be so cool if you just see him swooping through buildings every now and then.
Yeah, like Neo is just in your city now. That would be so rad. Yeah, no, it's a great game. Obviously, there's a lot of decision making, but I guess my point was that you're always going to be frustrated with the early part of your city if you play it within those rules. And I think that those rules are what makes this eligible for this category, in my opinion. Like there is so much planning that goes into it. Uh, forget even building things in the city. Picking which plot of land you're going to build your city on. It's like, very similar to like picking your island in Animal Crossing, right? Like,
Yeah.
being mindful of where your water is. Do you have a connection to an outside city? Like, there's a
Same
lot of
thing
strategy.
with Civ games. Like planning your first city is critical.
That's what I was saying about the
Yeah.
commercial, though, right? Is that I had unlocked the ability to build like small and medium-sized commercial
Yeah.
buildings, right? And the demand for commercial was so high, but if I did that, I was going to eat up so much land.
Mhm.
And I knew because I'm using the unlock system and the progression system that I was really close to unlocking like the commercial skyscrapers. And I'm like, you're just going to have to wait because I can't dedicate that much land to commercial and then a week from now like it's going to be a huge problem. So it's like you definitely have to make concessions and like sacrifices and whatnot in order to try to like get the optimal run through.
But also, like, you mentioned, okay, you can turn off some of these things. To me, more important from a strategy standpoint is you can pause. You can just say, okay, I know things are going bad right now. Let's take a timeout. I'm going to try to fix things, and then I'll hit play again. I think that creates a different level of strategy, too.
Yeah.
Where sometimes, if that wasn't an option, boy, things would get out of hand really quickly. Especially when you're pumping poop water into everyone's homes. But yeah, I think it's great that we've had a chance to talk about this game because it really hasn't come up a whole lot during our deliberations. It's an excellent video game that came out in 2023. Obviously, there's some performance issues or stuff, but like, I love the sandbox that they built. It's really good, and like, if I didn't have to play all these other games for the purpose of, putting together a game of the year list in these deliberations, I probably would have more hours in that. Because I remember Donovan, the first night you played it, you're like, I opened the game, I looked up, and it was like 5 hours later. And yeah, that game does that in spades. So a worthy nominee, and I think we've gone into depth explaining how it fits in this category, even though it does seem a little out of place compared to some of these games. There's definitely an element of strategy. So let's see. I'm gonna say Baldur's Gate for last. TJ, let's talk about Dune Spice Wars.
A game that was made for me this year. I feel like this. I mean, if you grew up on Westwood Games, you know about like Dune 2 Battle for Arrakis. It was like the precursor to everything we know about like a lot of this stuff. It's been so long, so incredibly long since we had a good Dune game. And it's been it's been a long time since we had a good Dune strategy game. And what a wonderful idea to take that concept and apply 4X to it, because there are so many different styles of factions in Dune as a whole. Like you had the Harkonnen, which are like the warriors. They're the villainous, brutalistic, just treacherous, horrible bastards. The Atreides, which are like more political, more honorable, more noble. They operate in politics and they excel in politics. You have the Thieves Guild, which is all about spycraft, all about like And they bring all of it together into this game and let you do the things that those factions are good at. Like, you don't have to go out there and fight enemies as the Thieves Guild. You don't have to engage in politics as the Harkonnen. And I'll tell you what, playing as the Fremen and being able to call up sandworms and then transport your troops across Arrakis in no time at all for guerrilla tactics is fun as hell.
Oh yeah.
Like, they did such an incredibly good job at translating everything that made Dune cool into a proper 4X game. I I like the fact that, like, you can even once you choose a faction in the game, you choose two commanders that give your faction specific bonuses. Like with the Atreides, if you choose to dedicate yourself into the Fremen commander, then you're going to be able to transport more troops at one time through a sandworm. And that's something that you can't do if you don't have that commander. And so even two people playing the same faction can play it vastly different from one another. It's like, this game hits every note that I love about games like Stellaris, and brings that into a Dune setting and makes all of the features of Dune work well. I like that, like, on the planet, if you're moving your troops or your equipment across the sand, you really have to be careful about leaving them on the sand, because sandworms will show up, they will demolish a huge portion of your fortresses or your forces, and then just disappear. And that's just you without a harvester and a whole bunch of troops in 1 second flat because you accidentally left them on the sand too long. You actually have to move them to, like, rock foundation ground to keep them out of danger. There's also, like, tornadoes in the game, sandstorms that'll come up and damage your buildings and your troops if they get caught in it. Like, there's so much to consider as the game goes on, and it's all so cool.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's been a weird time for RTS games, right? Like, the MOBA craze kind of killed RTS development for a little bit. But we've seen a resurgence in this space with this studio, but also, like, Off-World Trading Company, which I think is, like, a really unique take on this style. But you're right, Dune fits perfectly in this style of game. And yeah, this is an excellent video game. There's no question. And it's it's so strange that Dune is now, like, a hot IP. Like, it's
Back in
feel
the
like
zeitgeist.
it's strange. It's like 30 years, right? Since the last time it was kind of popular at all. And obviously the movie got delayed, so this is, for a Dune fan, this is what you should be playing right now. And if you're an RTS fan, same, because there's not a whole lot of great RTS games being made these days. Although we've seen some remakes of some of them and stuff, but
I think my only criticism of it so far is that I miss Westwood soundtracks. Like, man, they made good music for those games back in the day, and I don't think anyone hits quite the way they did.
and also amazing cutscenes.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not forget space.
Space.
Yep. Well, let's move on. A solid nomination. This is quite the stacked category this year. We talked about this in a past deliberation. I don't know what order these are going to go live in, but Shadow Gambit: The Cursed Crew is also a nominee here. And I know, TJ, you love this game, right?
Yeah. Me Games, very good at what they do. Like, this is their pirate outing for the games that they've done. You control a bunch of ghost pirates that all have their own unique abilities to them. Like, one of them has, like, a straight up cannon that they can stuff enemies into and fire at other enemies. One of them is like a sharp shot that can with a harpoon gun that can hit enemies from distance. There's a lot. And as you gather more members of the crew, you get more options to play with as far as, like, what you can do and how you can handle the puzzles in each map. Which, by the way, the maps are massive and super varied, and the way that you go about like accomplishing your missions in them is kind of dependent on who you bring with you to the mission. And I love that. I love a puzzle that's like simple enough to see, like you can see what the way from A to B is, but like you have all these tools with these different pirates that give you like you can use your own approach to get there.
Mhm. I think games like that, especially Mimi's games, they lend to like these emergent gameplay stories where you tell your friend a story about what happened on that level, and they tell you how they did it, and they're obviously different. There's like so many different ways to get past these things. I think games like this in the past were frustrating because there was only like one way to do it right, but now these developers have come up with a bunch of systems, a bunch of characters, a bunch of mechanics where you can really replay these and have like completely different stories about how you progress. I think it's really cool. I'm sad to see that this is their last game, but hell of a
You can
way
be
to go
so
out.
mean to the foes you dispatch in that game too. Like
Mhm.
one of the things that you do is it's got like a it's got Mimimi is really good at their quick save feature where like literally you take a snapshot of an occasion, you have that save and you can go back to it and try all sorts of different things. Well, if people discover bodies, they'll raise the alarm and suddenly your mission becomes a lot harder. So you go back, pick that body up, and just chuck it into the ocean. And I swear, like, if Cursed Gambit was a real life thing, there would be just so many bodies in the ocean from what I've done with that game. Just because that it's a good place to hide things.
Until low tide. Just a whole
True
beach
that.
of corpses. Awesome. Well, a worthy nomination for this best strategy game category. We gotta keep the train rolling. We got Jeff Keighley has ads to show here. But yeah, Jagged Alliance 3 is our next nominee. I believe TJ, you were the one pushing for this as well.
This was my actual nomination for this category. I love Jagged Alliance 3. It's I love Jagged Alliance in general. Like it's not always been good, and it's been a very long time since it's been good. Like we had some real stinkers in between Jagged Alliance 2 and when Jagged Alliance 3 happened. And it took Haemimont knowing not only knowing what to do with it, but also bringing the original creator back to work on it. And we have ourselves a game where like you pick up a bunch of mercenaries that have very different abilities to them, and you start a push into a nation to like try to seize control from a tyrant. And then it's not just like it's such a like multi-layered thing too because you are on the ground, you do like engage in battles, you do engage in exploration, and you have to like do like XCOM style combat where you take shots at enemies, you try to take them out before they can take you out, and try not to get injured in the process. But then beyond that, you have to actually like seize control of towns, defend those towns, build up their defenses. You have to get a hold of hospitals so you have good medical supplies to keep your mercenaries healthy. You have to capture diamond mines and keep control of them to make sure that you have money flowing in the game. Like there's a lot of elements to control in that game, and failing to like keep track of all of them will leave you in a tight spot as you go further in.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I believe that's another worthy nominee for this category, which is rather stacked. Uh, On to the last one. Our last nominee is not, we just kind of saved this for last because I think a lot of people will have opinions on this. Baldur's Gate 3, which I know is considered an RPG and a CRPG, but there's definitely a lot of strategy involved in this game, and kind of what we were talking about with emergent gameplay showing up in Shadow Gambit. I feel like BG3 is like emergent gameplay, the game. So who would like to sing the praises of Baldur's Gate 3? Donovan raises his hand.
I could do that.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about combat, Baldur's Gate 3 is deeply a strategy game. One, because it's like following D&D 5e, which is strategy. It's all about planning and execution. And I think there's a great example relatively early in Baldur's Gate 3. It's towards the end of Act 1 where essentially the Emerald Grove, which is where like all the druids live, there's like this massive onslaught where all the goblins come to attack them, and you might be on either side depending on where you've placed your allegiances in the story at that point. But there's like 30 characters and creatures involved in that battle, like combined. There's like giant, like horse-sized spiders. There's goblins. There's archers. There's people with like dynamite strapped to their chest trying to run to the gate. There's like an archmage on a cliff firing like spells and buffs at people. You have druids on your side transforming. It's this insane all-out battle that's happening. And again, it's a turn-based game, so you've got like 30 character portraits at the top, as everybody's just going in order. And like, I think that battle took me like an hour and a half to complete because every turn, whenever it was my turn, which felt like once every 10 minutes, I was standing there like surveying the whole battlefield. I'm like, everybody's got a weakness. People have, I mean, it's D&D, right? So people have character sheets. I'm looking at armor classes. I'm like, all right, if I hit this guy, I've got like a lower chance to hit him. But if I do, God, wouldn't that be great? It was like a tough battle. And like, in BG3, permadeath, I mean, there's permadeath mode, but even if you're not playing in permadeath, like all the NPCs can die permanently. So I'm like trying to save certain characters that I've talked to that I'm like, oh, you've got like a whole family you're trying to move. I can't let you die. Oh, you died anyway. You got like devoured by an acid spider. Like there's a deep level of strategy involved in the combat there. And I think no matter how much time I spent like planning out what I was gonna do during a turn, something would happen. I'd be like, oh, yep, did not consider that. And it would just always go tits up. But
I think it's that Mike Tyson quote, like everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right?
yeah, that game definitely referenced that. But yeah, there's a deep level of strategy, specifically with the combat, I would say, in Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah. What an awesome game. Like I have to say it every time. Like the fact that they've made the closest approximation to D&D into a video game, it should absolutely be in this category because D&D is definitely a game of strategery. So does anyone else have anything they want to say about any of these games, or should we get to voting? Okay, we're getting to voting. Let's start with Steve. Steve, what you got?
I think I'll go with Baldur's Gate for this one.
Baldur's Gate 3. Bill?
I'm going to represent City Skylines 2.
Okay. Talk about very different games that are both in this category for good reasons. TJ.
Okay, gosh.
Come on, TJ, doing the right thing.
Yeah, I know. It's got to. I think it's got to be Dune. Like, of all of these, the ones that I've gone back to play the most are Dune and Jagged Alliance 3. But I think Dune is just like that perfect encapsulation of my childhood mixed with good and new ideas.
Mm-hmm. Greg.
I'm gonna do Baldur's Gate 3.
Okay. I'm gonna wait. Donovan.
I know I just defended Baldur's Gate 3, and I love that game. I'll vote for it in other categories. I think Dune Spice Wars is probably the best strategy game. So, Dune.
Cool. David.
Yeah, I love RTS games. I hope this time next year we can talk about Stormgate. Until then, it's definitely Dune and Spice Wars.
Danny.
You know what? I'll go out on the limb with Bill on the City Skylines train. But from what I'm hearing about Spice Wars, it's also a good game.
Okay. Let's get our absentee ballots in here. What do you say?
They both voted for Dune.
They both voted for Dune?
Yep, Sam and Ozzy
Wow.
voted for Dune Spice Wars. Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
Okay. So that means my vote does not matter. So I'm gonna vote for City Skylines.
Nice.
Because I think it is a strategy game, as weird as it sounds.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
the game that I'm gonna put more hours into than Dune Spice Wars. Because like that RTS era for me involved like LAN parties and playing against other humans. And I just
Yeah.
I'm too old for that, and I also don't think that there's enough time in the day to do that anymore.
I did a lot of that back in the day, especially with StarCraft and the first CNC, but
Mhm.
I was a single player guy. I really love it's almost kind of peaceful to like build up a big base and just like this is my city, and then you're gonna start again later in the next level. But I kind of found that with Dune. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, the votes are in. All these games are awesome. Everyone who is nominated in this category should be proud of what they released this year. But there can be only one winner. There's only one God Emperor, I think. But yeah, Dune Spice Wars is the Shacknews Award winner for Best Strategy Game of the Year 2023.
The
Congratulations.
spice must flow.
On this day begin the Spice Wars.